In a hardcore Nuzlocke, you can't use items in battle. You have to play in set mode, and you can't overlevel past the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon. This is kind of terrifying. But through these simple limitations, you'll find each Pokemon can express their true power through their movesets, typings, and the strength your entire team will bring to each battle. So my goal today, I'm gonna beat Pokemon Emerald as a hardcore Nuzlocke, but I won't be using a single setup move throughout the entirety of the game, meaning things like Swords Dance, Double Team, Bulk Up, Belly Drum, or Calm Mind will not be allowed whatsoever. This is gonna be quite the adventure. So going into this ahead of time, I will say that Mudkip is absolutely the most busted starter Pokemon you can choose from. And because I know how to beat the game with Mudkip, we're gonna give the torch over to Trico instead. Trico is, for one, the worst of the 3 starter Pokemon you can choose from, but at the same time, one of the best grass-type Pokemon you can get in the game. So no regrets just yet. We start off our journey really strong and demolish our rival and head back to Professor Birch's lab for our first set of Pokeballs, which means the Nuzlocke officially begins. I take a step into the first routes and immediately notice that I can abuse the hell out of Species and Duplicate's Claws. This rule will let me re-roll encounters until I get a unique encounter, and I'm also only allowed to use one of each evolutionary line, meaning this Wurmple that I caught on Route 101 that evolved into a Dustox will be the only Wurmple evolutionary line I'm allowed to have. From here, I catch a Zigzagoon on Route 103, manage to get lucky and delay 102, and proceed to catch a Poochyena on Route 104. From here, it's time for our first abuse of Duplicate Claws. I get a wild Ralts. This is without a doubt probably the best psychic type I can get in the game. And using Synchronize to force a good nature onto another wild Pokemon will make it even more valuable than that. After catching Ralts, we get straight to business and head directly into the gym. I walk in confidently without a full team and proceed into the battle. I lead Trico, which absolutely demolishes both of Roxanne's Geodude with a little Absorb. Roxanne's Nosepass, on the other hand, is a huge stall fest that Trico was definitely not taking lying down. I crit her multiple times, and I walk away with the easiest badge I've ever had in my life. With a new badge in hand, I decided that it's time to abuse Species Claws once again. We grab a Whismur in Rust Turf Tunnel, head back into the route, and I get rewarded with Tailo. This little monster right here is like holding a Spirit Bomb when you combine Facade, its ability Guts, the same type attack bonus you get from a normal type move, and a single status ailment. This was literally all I needed to beat Brawly. From here, we evolve a ton of Pokemon, grab a few really good encounters, and make our way to Watson's doorstep. This gym's gonna be a little tricky, considering I don't have a single ground type Pokemon to my name, but I do have a few grass types up my sleeve. I start off the fight leading with Gloom in order to put Watson's Voltorb to sleep to give Linoon a safe switch since it has self-destruct. Linoon manages to take out not only the Voltorb, but the Electrike as well with ease. From here, I switch into Breloom to get an easy kill on Magneton. As Manectric comes out, I stall it out immediately with a little bit of Leech Seed, and it desperately tries to set up a ton with Howls for its only physical move, Quick Attack. But after a few Mach Punches and a lot more Leech Seed chip, we take it out with ease. From here, it was now time to make our way to Flannery, but only after we took care of a little business with Team Magma through the power of our god, Illumise. I grab a couple more encounters and proceed to grab the egg from the old lady at the hot springs to hatch yet another S-tier Pokemon and my absolute favorite, Wobbuffet. I walk into Flannery's gym leading Azumarill that absolutely demolishes 3 of her Pokemon in an instant. Then out comes the big problem. Torkoal. With me having thick fat, Torkoal will either go for Body Slam or Attract almost guaranteed. So I come up with a strategy of switching into Illumise, which can then go for Encore and force her into either going for Body Slam or Attract constantly. With her being forced into Attract, I know I can abuse this fact by going into the same gender Pokemon, since that won't work with Attract, and chip her until the Encore ends once again. Once the Encore ends, I know an Overheat's coming in, so we switch back into Azumarill, and then I can rinse and repeat this strategy once more until I can finally force this Torkoal into using Body Slam. From here, Wobbuffet's power is going to shine. Counter with Body Slam absolutely demolishes the Torkoal, bringing me one of the most complicated victories I've ever had in a vanilla Pokemon game. And so, on to Petalburg we go to fight our father, but not before finally losing my first Pokemon. See this Zangoose? They're an absolute monster with Swords Dance and Slash. It's a gross situation to be in, and the only way I was able to get out of it was through a few pivots and an unfortunate sacrifice for my dear Crobat. You'll be missed, buddy. But now, it was time for Norman. For Norman, I decided to lead with Wobbuffet so I can safeguard against this Spinda who loves to absolutely spam Teeter Dance. Not only will it stop Teeter Dance from confusing me, but it'll also stop the Slay King from affecting me with Yawn. So I go for that, immediately switch into Breloom, and proceed to Mach Punch his first 3 Pokemon to death before his big boy Slacking comes in. I decide to pivot until I can finally force Slacking to do a move that I want to do, and eventually hit a safeguard into Encoring Yawn so that Breloom can safely come in, lead seed, and then spam Mach Punch to death, giving us a nice, clean victory. On to Winona we go with her absolutely monstrous Altaria. And I didn't have a single Ice or Electric type Pokemon to my name. This is pretty much the part of the game where Swampert shines through the most. I ended up picking up a insanely valuable Pokemon, Castform, whose weather setting abilities are monstrous. So I decided to lead off with it against Winona and immediately set up Hail in order to get Castform going. But unfortunately, Swablu had other plans and immediately goes for Parasong. Before the Parasong ends, she unfortunately switches out into Skarmory. So now I gotta switch over to Sunny Day, and Weather Ball takes it out pretty quickly. From here, she sends out pretty much the only threat I'm going to see, Pelipper. I chip it down just enough so that Hail and Weather Ball should take it out in one shot. From here, we take out 1, 2, 3, 4 Pokemon with Weather Ball. Castform is an absolute monster. People dumpster on this Pokemon all the time, but it's seriously such an insane asset with its weather setting abilities. But now we're at the point of the game where it kind of feels like Game Freak gave up on ideas on what to give Team Magma and Aqua. And afterwards, I set my sights on the hardest gym fight in the game, Tate and Liza. Luckily for me, I picked up a ton of dark Pokemon that proved to be insanely valuable throughout this fight. So to start things off with this fight, I lead off with Sharpedo and Mightyena. I pivot my right side as a switch between Gyarados and Mightyena in order to make Claydoll's Earthquake as useless as possible, while crunching down the Natu to death. As Natu dies, Solrock comes in, and I make sure to taunt it so it can't Calm Mind while crunching it down a little bit, eventually switching out Sharpedo for Sceptile to take a Solar Beam, and then I proceed to bring in Absol. All that's left from here is to use every single dark type move in my arsenal and whittle their HP down to 0, bringing me probably the most fun victory I've had so far. With Tate and Liza down, it was time for the final gym that has an ice puzzle that's literally harder than the entire evil team section. What were they thinking? I must say though, the gym battle was surprisingly complicated. I had a pretty creative answer to the problem that this double teaming Kingdra poses. I decided to lead off with this fight with Sceptile in order to absolutely demolish this Lovedust. I also had a chance to kill Celio here, but if I do, it's going to send out Kingdra early due to it having an ice move in its inventory. And I don't want that thing coming out just yet. So instead of killing it in one shot, we Toxic Stall the Celio with Dustox, which then brings out Whiscash. So we Toxic Stall him too. And I make sure to bring in my secret weapon before it dies, Wheezing. The reason why I want Wheezing out is it's actually the only Pokemon in my entire box that has Haze, and that'll actually get rid of every single stack of double team. So from here, all I need to do is hit a Toxic and stall this thing out before it sets up like crazy. Eventually, I find myself in a situation where I need to get it to stop resting. So I switch into Walrein, lock it into a move so it wouldn't be able to rest its HP back up, and eventually find myself securing a victory, getting its HP down to 0. All that was left now was the Elite Four. But before we head off to the Elite Four, we had one final very important Pokemon I wanted to catch. With me catching the Zubat line as a duplicate, it's a 50-50 chance for me to get either a Bajon or a Lunatone. And I get rewarded with a Bajon. With this, I now have the final tool to absolutely demolish the Elite Four. My final team ends up being Breloom, Sharpedo, Salamence, Walrein, Wheezing, and Ludicolo. Our first battle with Sydney was an absolute sweep with Breloom. The second one with Phoebe was also a sweep with Sharpedo. It wasn't until Glacia that things got a little spooky. I lead with Breloom here and one-shot both of her Celio, which brings out Walrein. Unfortunately, the only move that I had that could kill this thing in one shot didn't actually have 100% accuracy. And if I miss this Sky Uppercut, I'll get hit with a Blizzard. I click the move, it hits. The rest of our team falls with ease. Jaiden is now our next stop before the champion. So I lead this fight with Ludicolo, taking out 2 Pokemon instantly with Ice Beam. Once Kingdra comes in, I immediately switch into Salamence, taking out 2 of her Pokemon with Dragon Claw. Drake then sends out his own Salamence, and against my better judgment, I decided to take a massive risk and hit Dragon Claw. And I get punished. Drake manages to land a crit on my Salamence, taking it out in one shot. I then sent in Wall Rain, finishing the job that Salamence was meant to do. This was, unfortunately, a pretty brutal outcome, and put a pretty big hole into my plan that Salamence was supposed to fill. So, I had to come up with a really creative solution to get past the parts where Salamence shine. I taught Thunderbolt to Wheezing, Bakati to Sharpedo, and Safeguard to Breloom. From here, it was time for the champion. I lead with Breloom in order to force Wailord to Blizzard on my switch to Wall Rain. I then proceed to Encore it into using up the rest of its Blizzard PP and spam Ice Beam instead of Surf, as to not force the AI to switch into Ludicolo just yet, and eventually finish the Wailord off for good. Next comes in Ludicolo. I want to make sure to lock this thing into something that would be beneficial for a switch. So as I go for Encore, he sets up with Double Team, and I immediately switch out into Wheezing, haze away those Double Team stacks before killing it off with some Sludge Bombs. Wallace then sends out Whiskash, so I go straight into Ludicolo. From here, I spam Giga Drain until it finally dies before activating my Lepa Berry, giving me back all of my Giga Drain PP. With Whiskash dead, Wallace sends out his biggest threat yet, Tentacruel. This is the Pokemon that was meant to be dealt with by Salamence, but instead, I had to do this. First, I switch into Wheezing to take any poison move that manages to come in. I know a Hydro Pump's coming, so I switch into Sharpedo, hoping it either misses or doesn't crit me. Luckily, I managed to tank it pretty well. And here, I have to bank on the AI using Toxic on me. I figured I had a really good chance of this happening considering it was still in full HP. So, I click Crunch. And as I predicted the AI to do, it goes for Toxic. Meaning, Bakati with Silk Scarf should do just enough damage to take out the Tentacruel. And now it was time for yet another sacrifice. With Melvin's last breath, I click Bakati one more time, sacrificing it to do a ton of damage to my Lotic. Now is the time to switch in Ludicolo and attempt to kill it with Giga Drain. But I get ultra punished for having no Lumberry, and I get frozen. So now I have to make yet another crazy decision. And unfortunately, I had no use for a frozen Ludicolo. All the Ludicolo takes his last breath in that big block of ice. From here, I need this Milotic to Toxic me. So I spam Ice Beam until my Milotic heals to full. And I end up randomly getting a freeze. Things are looking really good. So it was time for me to switch. I switch into Breloom and once again, get immediately punished with a turn 1 Defrost Toxic. Oh boy. So the only thing this thing's going to go for now is going to be an Ice Beam. So I switch back into Wall Rain in order to take the Ice Beam, and then bank on the AI going for Toxic. I get rewarded and immediately force it into going for Toxic every single turn. From here, I switch out into Breloom and start spamming Sky Uppercut. I managed to connect 3 before finally missing one. Luckily for me, the Encore stays up long enough for me to connect the final blow to my Lotic. Now out comes Wallace's final Pokemon, Gyarados. Needing a safe switch into Wheezing, I make the decision to sacrifice Breloom and hope that maybe it'll click Hyper Beam. Instead, it clicks Earthquake, which leads me to believe this might be another good opportunity for another Encore. So I send out Wall Rain, use up the final Encore PP in my inventory, and it locks it straight into Earthquake. Now, I can safely switch into Wheezing to levitate the Earthquake, click Thunderbolt, and it barely misses the mark. Since I know he's going to heal up, I click Sludge Bomb as to not force it to heal again. And then the Encore ends on Gyarados. If this thing crits me right now, this might actually be the end for me. So I decide to just go ahead and click Explosion. Gyarados lands a hit. He doesn't crit. And I take out both the Gyarados and my good friend Wheezing, winning ourselves a hard-earned victory. The Pokemon Emerald Hardcore Nuzlocke was complete, and honestly, this was quite the adventure. Had I used any setup moves, this game would have been significantly easier, but I still don't think it was actually all too difficult. The balance of the evil teams, never being forced to fight gym trainers, and the rival having extremely pathetic Pokemon made this drag on a bit. But the amount of strategy I got to show towards the end of the game is what really made this challenge something special to me. And that's what I loved about this challenge, and hopefully you did too. Because literally 100% of the people that watch this video aren't actually subscribed to me, so you should do that, please, for the love